Hey, it's Justin from Trek Bikes to give you my review of the Ducati Demo Days Experience held at Northern Ohio Ducati in Triumph, where I was able to ride both the new 2016 Ducati XDiavel and the 2016 Ducati Panigale 959. After throwing our riding gear in the car, my buddy Steve and I arrived early to meet up with our friend Josiah. The bikes were being prepped as we arrived. I went in to get signed up with Mindy, who was great and took care of us the entire day. I wanted to get on the Diavel first, so Mindy made sure there was one available for me. I was looking to ride the Diavel specifically because it had standard pegs, but was later told they only had 2016 models to demo. I would be riding the XDiavel. The forward controls were a little intimidating at first. The only other bike I've ridden with forward controls was a V-Rod, and I did not like having my legs in front of me, but I really wanted to get in the saddle of Ducati's "Don't Call It a Cruiser" muscle bike. They gave us a quick ride briefing, pretty common sense stuff, no stunning, no racing, no wheelies, basically don't ride like a jerk on our demo bikes. You wreck it, you bought it. Or at the very least, you were paying to fix it. We put on our gear and mounted up on our bikes. Jacket, helmet, gloves, boots, all required, the same stuff as the MSF courses. The route was a 17-mile loop around Akron into Cuyahoga Falls and back. It took us about 45 minutes at mostly 35 mile per hour speeds. I think I touched 55 mile per hour once, accelerating from a stop, just to get a feel for the power on my butt dyno. On to the XDiavel. There are tons of sites where you can read the specs and bench race this bike against all other bikes in its class. I'm not planning on going into all that. I'll give you my overall impression of the bike, as well as a couple detail-oriented OCD things I noticed. I'll try to be as objective as possible, but riding is a very subjective thing, so your experience may differ. Other than a few one-time I rode stories, like the V-Rod, some old UJM stuff, and the occasional Sumo, I'm predominantly sport bike biased, yet I could totally see myself on the XDiavel, or the regular Diavel. First, it looks stunning. The single-sided swing arm will always score brownie points in the sexiness department. Fortunately, the XDiavel rides as well as it looks. The bike really does hit that sweet spot between a full-on cruiser and a sport bike. I'd go for the touring package with bags and stuff, at least if you plan on doing anything more than bouncing from bike night to bike night. The bike felt nimble and flickable, which isn't a surprise given its lightweight. I consider that a safety feature. I want a bike I can maneuver. Yes, it's not a Panigale, but it also doesn't feel like a dump truck when turning and braking. It has ABS and Ducati's traction control system, neither of which I tested, but these are both good things. The engine has the V-twin torque that guys love about V-twins. It's been tuned to pull stumps in the mid-range, but again, some of this may be attributed to its lightness. It really doesn't put off that much heat either, at least not that I felt. I wasn't roasting. The stock seat was the most comfortable I've been on. It cupped my rump in all the right places. I could see putting 600-mile days on it, no problem, especially with the factory cruise control. I'm not used to have electronic stuff to play with, but the cruise control was awesome. It has a minimum set speed of 30 miles per hour, I tested it, and will disengage via the brakes or the clutch. As for the things I noticed that I didn't particularly care for, the throttle-by-wire system. It has a perceptible delay, though it's very minor. Honestly, it would probably go unnoticed in everyday riding, but if you find yourself at a drag strip or someone wants to get uppity with you at a stoplight, you'll be spotting your competition at least a few hundredths off the green based on the fly-by-wire throttle. Second, I know the forks are considered a system, but I don't like that the forks aren't individually adjustable for compression and rebound. The left fork handles compression damping, and the right fork handles the rebound damping. Depending on if you have a strong opinion on your fork adjustments, just be aware that this is the setup on the XDiavel. Is this a deal breaker? It shouldn't be. The electronic menu system wasn't the greatest. In fact, the whole gauge cluster wasn't anything exciting. Yes, I could switch between sport, touring, and urban modes on the fly, though you do have to close the throttle completely for the setting to take. The issue is with what modes displayed what information. I didn't read the owner's manual before hopping on the bikes, so I'm not sure if it's just a setting that needs changed, but I like to see lots of information. To me, engine temperature is an important thing, and only the sport mode showed the engine temperature on the screen. While I like the key fob idea, there's still an on switch that can be optionally used. You'd probably never use it, but the switch is there, it's labeled, so I had to try to do something with it. It took a minute, but it's a momentary switch that turns counterclockwise and does the same thing as pressing the security button on the right stalk. It fires up the display and puts the bike in ready for ignition mode. Push the security button again, or turn the switch, and the display turns off and you've effectively shut the bike off. Now it's only the red security LEDs that flash. Finally, I consider the maintenance. Sexiness typically means trouble, and I'm not looking forward to the first service bill. Or for guys that wrench on the bike themselves, the various specialty Ducati tools you'll have to buy or make. Right now, I'm only set up to maintain Japanese bikes. Despite that, if money and space were available, I'd have one. I still want to ride the Diavel to see how the standard controls feel, but I wasn't as out of place on the XDiavel forward controls as I thought I might be. After 5 minutes on the bike, it was second nature. I like the fact that there's really no other muscle bike that fights in the featherweight class. It's comfortable and turns heads. What's not to like? After hopping off the XDiavel, I thought Mindy had put me right back on the next ride for the Panigale 959, but there was a mix-up, so now I'd be on the 2 p.m. ride. We had 3 hours to kill. The dealership was grilling burgers, brats, and dogs, along with some beans, chips, fruit, and cookies. They also had water and pop to drink. After some food, we walked around the dealership to look at the new Ducks and Triumphs. The dealership was super clean and the staff was friendly. I was eyeballing some of the bikes they took in on trade. Specifically, they had a B-King, an H2, and an 848 Evo that they had lined up next to each other. Sounds about like my dream garage. Once 2 p.m. rolled around, we threw our gear back on and I flung my leg over a white Panigale 959. I admit, I had pretty high expectations for the Panigale. I've read the reviews, I drool over the Duck owners on track days. This bike is supposed to be the V-twin to have. And that may be the case for a track day, but as a street bike, I have a lot of complaints. This bike was a torture rack on the demo ride. To start, there's a lot of weight put on the wrist from the riding position, more than other sport bikes I've ridden. But even that's a minor issue compared to the amount of heat this bike puts off riding around town. I welcomed the light spritzer of rain we got during our ride. Engine temps were in the 220 range for the city, and the heat is channeled directly into your meat and potatoes, or womanly bits for the lady Ducatista out there. And if city riding is bad enough, stopping makes it worse. Unless you have a wide stance, the hot clutch basket cover is nearly touching your leg. Not a big deal on the track, but for a street ride with jeans, could be problematic. I also don't trust the small plastic rear spring cover on the left side of the bike. It's really flimsy, and I can't help but wonder if somehow, some way, you could pinch your leg in there. But seriously, the heat this thing puts off on the street is worse than anything else I've ridden. It needs to be in motion at all times. The seat is the hardest I've sat on for a street bike as well. It's somewhere between concrete and hardwood. Fine for the track, as shifting your butt left and right on the seat was really easy. But for commuting or hours of riding on the back roads, no way, not for me. Granted, the ride route and speed limits also didn't do the engine any favors. You can tell that low RPM isn't where the engine likes to live. But I only had the opportunity to push it past 6K a couple times on the ride. The engine wanted to come alive, but the demo ride wasn't going to let it. So I can't really comment on the performance, other than the XDiavel felt like it had way more grunt on the demo ride. The Panigale also suffers from the same fly-by-wire delay, which I felt was totally unacceptable for a sport bike. I have the same complaints about the menu system being tough to navigate while riding. Ducati could use some dedicated buttons for that, since it's really not intuitive. I also don't like the odd way you have to activate the high beams on the Panigale 959. It's not consistent across the models. I preferred how the XDiavel switch worked. For all those reasons, I'm not planning to punish myself with the 959 for a street bike. I'd still consider it for a track bike, but you've got to be a glutton for punishment to commute on one. It does ooze sexiness, so I can understand why someone sacrificed comfort for that image, that coolness factor. I'm just not one of those guys. No hate. That concluded our demo day. We said thanks and goodbye to the dealership folks for taking good care of us and letting us ride their machines for the day. If you have any questions about the XDiavel 959 or the whole Ducati demo experience, leave them in the comments below and I'll answer them. If you enjoyed the content, don't be shy to show some love with a like, and subscribe to be notified when I put up more videos. Thanks for watching.